And I think that could, within a few years, that might be a problem for Paris-Brest-Paris as well.
So welcome to this video, which is part of a series of videos that looks at randonneuring in various parts of the world. The randonneurs that I will be interviewing in this series have all participated in the Paris-Brest-Paris in 2023. So I'm first going to ask them about what it's like to randonneur in their part of the world, and then we'll talk about their Paris-Brest-Paris experience.
I'm Helen. I'm from England originally, but I've lived in France for nearly 40 years now. My background is not a cyclist at all. I was a marathon runner, a long distance runner for a long time. It's getting harder and harder on the joints, so I decided I'd better do something else. I took up cycling. For my 60th birthday, I got myself a nice bike, a nice carbon bike, which was the first time I had ever had a nice bike in my life. I'd only ever used bicycles for transport up until then. One day I thought it'd be nice to try to do a 200-kilometre thing, and I saw that there was one organised in Orléans. I had a lovely day out. I met lots of people, and the 200 kilometres just passed just like that. So my first 200 was at the beginning of 2021. I wasn't in a club because I'm still in an athletics club, so I couldn't really manage time to be in a bicycle club as well. The following year, 2022, I'll do the 200 kilometres again. And then I thought, well, why not try 300? That can't be that much more difficult. In fact, it wasn't. I found the most difficult thing about the 300 was getting up to be ready to start at 4 o'clock in the morning. Once we'd gone. So that, and we got home in time for a beer at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the evening. So that worked out nicely. I talked to lots of people who were interested in Paris-Brest on these rides, but at that time I never thought, oh, it's an awful long way. I couldn't imagine doing anything like that. So coming around to this year, in 2023, I did a 200, I did a 300. I thought, well, this year I'll try a 400. Enjoyed it, and people said, oh, if you can do a 400, you can do a 600. I got caught up in it, did the 600 at the beginning of June this year. So it's the longest ride I'd ever done. It was hard work. I had a very sore bum afterwards. I'd got all the qualifications for entering Paris-Brest-Paris. At that point, I said, no way, it would be just too hard. It's just too painful to do anything like that. And then 3 weeks later, there were still some spaces. I'd been talked into it. Is this a good idea or not? So that was my introduction to Paris-Brest-Paris.
That is really quite amazing. Such a rapid progression. Do you think that your background as a marathon runner made a big difference? Did that help you a lot in terms of your endurance and your fitness?
I think it did, but obviously nothing like the time that you spend on a bicycle. But I remember thinking the first time I did 100 kilometers, even 200 kilometers, thinking I've been on a bike for 8-9 hours or more, and nothing hurts at this point. If I run for an hour and a half, everywhere hurts. So nice to be able to do some sport where it didn't hurt. And being able to see countryside and going all sorts of places. With running, you do the same runs all the time. Well, when you're out on a bicycle, you can vary so much more than if you're just going 10, 15 kilometers when you're running. That's what I enjoyed. I started doing 1 or 2 rides as a way of getting to places rather than just going out for a ride. For instance, I went for a weekend. I wanted to go to somewhere in Normandy. So I did half of it on the train and half of it on the bicycle. And coming back, I did it the other way around, the other half on the bicycle and the other half on the train. So that was quite fun because you could get to see bits of countryside that you wouldn't bother stopping at if you were in a car or on a train. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had the time to do it.
So what's it like randonneuring in France?
The 200s are pretty popular. Sometimes there's been 200, 300 people. I did one with the centenary of the Paris Audax Club. That was very popular. There were 300 people who did it. So you've got people to ride with, and which is really pleasant. When you get to the longer ones, it's more difficult. I did ride the 400s I finished with a group of 5 or 6 people, and even the 600, when there were only 75 people altogether who did it, I finished in a group of 4, we'd done the last 400 kilometres together. It helps to finish because everybody was sore everywhere. And oh no, we can't go any much further. Yes, it's not that much further, but it did help. I have seemed to seen the same people several times. We follow each other on Strava and things like that. So usually good if somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to do this one. Is there anybody else?" So we get to know that somebody is doing one particular one. Some people will go as a function of that. I've never heard of the word randonneuring until actually Paris-Brest-Paris was happening, because obviously it's not a word which is used in France at all. People talk about faire les brevets. They talk about the brevet. Faire is doing un brevet. Well, they're all called BRM, brevet des randonneurs mondiaux. So we just said mon brevet 200, mon brevet 300, or 200 brevet, or it's 300 brevet. That's what they call it mostly.
And do they call themselves randonneurs?
Nothing in particular. Cyclotourist.
Yes, I saw lots of cyclotourists on the way. There's lots of clubs that are cyclotourists. Oh, okay. So that's so interesting. So it's quite different then.
So it did help. I did know the beginning of the ride. As far as Mortagne, that was not uncharted territory for me.
Do the local riders ride the Paris-Brest-Paris route quite frequently in that case?
Probably not, because the roads themselves, some of them were actually quite wide ones, usually have a fair amount of traffic. Well, they would use some of them, but not all the time. I think the difference is that when you're running, you don't often chat with people unless you're really at the back end. When you're a competitor, you only talk to people really either before or after. Well, I did my last one about maybe 10 years ago, and I was pretty competitive. I would only be talking afterwards. The camaraderie on the bicycle, I think it's similar, but it's you get it while you're riding as well. I think it's like with all sports. You've got some people who are nice and some people who are a little less nice. So you take the good with the bad, as usual. 63. Most of the people I've been riding with, quite a lot have been in their 50s and 60s. There are a few which are a few younger, but not that many, in fact. Mostly a lot older people, especially the people who did Paris-Brest. Most of them, they'd quite a lot who had a lot of experience, who'd done it a few times before.
Do you get the sense that there's more interest from female riders to participate in both brevet riding as well as in Paris-Brest?
I think so, yes. This is most times I've met up with one or two other female riders on these things, and we've kept in touch and gone for rides together outside these brevets, which has been very pleasant. I don't think I'd have found them any other way, because I'm not in a club.
You say you don't belong to a specific randonneuring club, but do you have to belong to Audax Club Parisien to participate in the Paris-Brest?
Not at all, no. You just have to do your brevets like everybody else. I think the entry fee might have been €20 more for people who weren't in a club. That was the only difference between somebody who's in a club and somebody who isn't.
How did get to have so many volunteers?
Well, that's maybe a problem in coming years. Well, most sports clubs will organise an event, so it's usually people who are in the club and their families and friends who will come and be volunteers to help for this sort of thing. I think we're experiencing, like lots of other clubs, so I presume most cycling clubs have the same problem, that people don't see clubs as associations where everybody puts something in. So people treat clubs as consumers. I pay my fee for the year, so I get this and that, rather than I pay a fee for the year, I get this, but I give that as well. But that's a problem for lots of associations. More and more difficulty getting volunteers. And I think that could be a problem for Paris-Brest-Paris as well. I hope not. They'd be local people. They'd be from a local sports club, or maybe a local cycling club. Quite often, if you do when you organise a big event in your town or your village, if you need help, you'll ask other associations, have you got some people who can help us as signallers or whatever? You quite often have friends and family who'll come along and help as well, and that sort of thing. That's the usual way of recruiting volunteers. You start with the associations, and sometimes they'll have help from the town hall, the mairie as they call it. They'll usually be somebody an adjoint, somebody who's delegated to look after associations and things, so sometimes they'll help out as well. So, or at least help with finding people. That's the usual system for finding volunteers.
Where do you find the time to train on your bicycle?
I do part of my commute on the bicycle. I work in Paris, so I have a bit to go to the station. I take the bike on the train, and then I have to cross Paris. If I do that, that'll make me do about 45, 50 kilometres in a day. I do that a couple of times a week. And then weekends, I managed to ride all through last winter. I think the longest I would do over the winter would be 100 kilometers maximum. Try and do the same thing this winter.
What does your family think about your randonneuring?
Well, my husband is retired, and he now lives in our house. We have a house in the Dordogne, and he lives there now. So he's not there most of the time. So I think it's only because of that I've actually do as much training. Wouldn't do that much while he's around like that probably until I retire, but at that point things might change, but I'll have time in the daytime at that point as well, so maybe, so who knows.
I'm going to interrupt this video at this point, and I want to say thank you so much for joining us in this video. If you have enjoyed this part of the video, please press that like button. Remember, if you would like to see the second part of this video, please subscribe to this channel. Until next week, please ride safely.